I'm preaching tonight. But we are up to Growing Not Manufactured Part 4. And this series has been wild for me. And it's not because I feel like I'm preaching it to the church or I'm preaching it to people online. It's literally the experience of what I'm going through as a person right now. And so I'm preaching out of experience. I'm preaching out of challenges in my own life. And so tonight I've subtitled Growing Not Manufactured Part 4. And I've called it, You Need Mud to Grow. Now, all my farmers in the place go, yeah, I know what he means by that. Like, you need soil, you need mud, you need dirt, you need stuff like that to grow. And I'd love to explain what I mean in a minute. But you need mud to grow. And so tonight's premise, I just want to just start off with, and I pray that you come along this journey with me. The reality of our lives, reality of being human, is that we have mess. Am I the only one that has mess? We have mess. We have things that have gone wrong. We've lived in places where it's hard. I know for me, I've got plenty of mistakes in my life. And sometimes it feels like we're stuck in the mud. You know, I was talking to someone just this week. They were telling me about their lives and what they're going through. And they said, I can't let go of the hurt that someone's put on my life. I mean, I've heard all the messages. I know I love God. I know God loves me. But it's just impossible to forgive someone that did something wrong by me. And I love to think of this as being stuck in the mud. You know, some of us, we feel like things have happened to us that we wish we could change. Some of us have damaged souls, and that's because people have damaged them, and people have hurt us, and people have betrayed us, and, you know, it's humanity. You know, some of us have hurts that are just, I don't know if it's just me, but I just feel like they're impossible to let go of. It's like I've got this hurt, and I know that I've got to love people, I know that God's working in my life, and I know all these things, but there's this hurt that I hang on to. And then all of a sudden, you turn up to church, you're listening to some preacher talking about growing, not manufactured for the last 3 parts, and he's saying to you, come on, it's time to grow, it's time to change, it's time to get through this, and you're kind of sometimes like, well, that's the last thing I want to hear. Like, if I'm honest with you, I've got some mess going on. I've sinned, I'm in mess, I'm in addiction, I'm in turmoil, I'm in trouble, I'm in sin, I've got things going wrong in my life. And the preacher man starts to say, well, come on, we're going to grow. It's time to change the world. It's time to give more to the church. It's time to serve more. It's time to love more. It's time to have more grace for our enemies. And you're sitting there going, well, brother, I'm in the mud. I'm in the dirt. I'm in the mess. And I'm glad that this week God kind of took me on this journey to understand what it feels like to be in the mud. And so I want to just start tonight with this encouragement. It's found in Ephesians 2:8-10. And it says here, for it is by grace you and I have been saved through faith. And this is not from ourselves, but it is a gift from God. So first of all, I want to get this straight. If you're hearing me talk about growing, not manufactured, if you're hearing me talk about growing your fruit in your life and changing, it's not because I'm great. It's not because I made it. It's not because I'm awesome. It's because there's a God that gave me a gift, which was grace. It's something I did not deserve. It's something I couldn't earn. The Bible says here that we can't even boast about it in verse 9. Because it's not done by works. It's not done because we're awesome. It's not done because of all these things. But in verse 10 it says here, because it's where His handiwork and He's prepared good works for us in advance. So let me just rewind the clock back here for a moment, because it's not even what I'm preaching. I'm just trying to get us into the mood. It's God saying this, hey, none of us are qualified to have fruit. None of us deserve blessing. None of us deserve anything happening in our lives, because we've all sinned, we're all a mess, and we've all made mistakes. But then God comes in the picture and says, you know what? I love people so much, the very thing that I created, my handiwork, that I would do anything to restore humanity. I'll do anything to give someone a second chance. And so He reminds us that it's not through our works that I've made it, that I'm blessed, that I've got fruit in my life, but it's actually because He gave a gift that I can't buy, earn, or work my way into, which is His wonderful, perfect grace for my life. Keeping up? And then in verse 10 He says, and I've prepared for you works in advance. So here we go. This is why fruit's important. All of a sudden it's like, well, I don't deserve it, but God will give it to you because you trust Him. And because you trust Him, then He'll use it to reach other people. And so I want to encourage you tonight. God's not just in the business of saving you. He's also in the business of transforming you. God doesn't just give out grace and says, hey, you're saved. He also then says, hey, I want to transform your life. And the byproduct of this is that you and I, when we accept the grace that he's given us, the byproduct is we become kinder. The byproduct is we become more loving. The byproduct is that we become more graceful. The byproduct is that we become more generous. The byproduct is we become more forgiving, not because we're awesome and not because we made it, but because his grace transformed our lives enough that I start to forgive my enemies because he forgave me. And thank goodness, church, have a breath. Breathe. Because now I live a life as a pastor that I know that none of this is because of my strength or my doing. But it's because of his strength and his doing. And I don't know about you, but there was one stage of my life, and I'm talking to someone maybe new tonight that maybe is looking for God. There's one stage in my life where I was thankful that I had a divine, higher power encounter. That God said, you no longer can do it your way, you've got to do it my way. And it changed my life forever. I don't want to be in control of this. I needed the intervention. And can I say this tonight? My prayer is that people's lives will be interrupted right now because God's going to start speaking to you about your mud and your mess. So let's read about it. Talking about it. Let's preach about it. I want to read you this verse tonight that it's famous in the church world. If you've been around, you'll know it. But it speaks to those that don't believe. And I want to explain what I mean by this. But basically, the premise of tonight is I don't believe, and don't cancel me and be kind of like, I hope I don't get in trouble for this. But I actually don't believe that your life can be used for good without mud, without mess, without sin, without problems, without things going wrong. So it's not about perfection, everyone with me. It's not about having a perfect life or being born perfect it's about God using the mud in our lives to produce fruit. And so we find this in John 8:11, and I'll read it with you guys. And it's Jesus, right? So Jesus comes down he goes to the place of Mount of Olives, it says here. And at dawn he appeared again at the temple courts, where all the people were gathered around him. And he sat down and began to teach them. In verse 3, the teachers of the law. Now this is where I want to just kind of interject this here. The teachers of the law, the people that knew how this all works, the Pharisees, it says, the people that knew the religious, lawful structure, the grown, not manufactured kind of ideology. They toss and they throw a woman in front of Jesus and they say, we have caught her in the act of adultery. And this is what I find crazy in verse 3. I actually discovered this afternoon. They made her stand before the group, which means if you're ever in a place that religion starts to expose or shame you, that is not from God. Our faith is not about exposing. Our faith is not shaming you in front of the group. Our faith is that God would transform your life from the inside out. So I found that interesting that they're here and they throw before Jesus. They say, look at this girl. Look, she's caught in adultery. And then verse 4, and they said to Jesus, teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Verse 5, they started quoting the law. They said, in the law it commands us to stone this woman to death. Now what do you say? So they flick it back to Jesus. Verse 6 says here, they were using questions as a trap in order to have a bias for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write in the ground with his finger in the dirt. When they kept questioning him, he straightened up and he said to them, let anyone who is without sin throw the first stone. Now let's just pause there for a second. Because we know that we want our lives not be manufactured through the religion. We want it to grow. And here is a clashing of growth versus manufacture. Because they want to manufacture her out of her sin. Let's stone her to death for what she's done. Let's punish her for what she's done. But Jesus then says, those without sin, throw the first stone. Now all of a sudden everyone in the church, including me, we go a bit quiet. We're like, I was judging so-and-so before they came in. Now Jesus is reflecting it back on us. And then again in verse 8, he goes back down to the ground. And he starts to draw on the ground again. In verse 9, at this, those heard began to go away one at a time. The older ones first. until the only one left was Jesus and the woman standing there. And in verse 10, Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" And in verse 11, she says, "No one, sir," she said. And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you." Then Jesus declared, "Go now and leave your life of sin." And so this growth is happening, this tension between religion manufactured and this growth of relationship, because Jesus says, those without sin, don't go on, throw the first stone, no one can. And then he says to her, "Now you go, I don't condemn you either, but walk away from that life." And I realize a lot of us, we're in the mess. We're in the dirt. We've all made mistakes. We've all sinned. We've all had nasty thoughts. We've all judged. We've all, if we just, as a church, to be honest, we are all in this mess together. None of us have made it. None of us will be better than others. It's not us versus them versus the church people and those out there. There's just humanity fell. Humanity is in the mud, and here we are. And when you grasp that reality, and when you believe that reality, you don't struggle with what I'm saying about putting God first in your life. You don't think, well, why is he talking about generosity? And why is he talking about serving? And why is he talking about winning my neighbor? Because all of a sudden you start to realize that none of us were qualified, none of us made it anyway. And so manufactured versus grown, like grown versus manufactured, starts to make sense to me. And I'll tell you why. Because when grace collides with your mess, the mud in your life begins to become fertile. Religion will allow you to bring your mess to the altar, come to church, do whatever you have to do, and it will condemn you, and it will judge you, and it will squeeze you out of what your bad behavior is. But a relationship with God will allow you to come to the church, come to the place with your mud, with your mess, with your mistakes, and he goes, "I will make that fertile. I will turn that mud into something beautiful." And what I've realized is that you need mud to grow. You can't grow a tree without mud. You can't grow plants without soil. You can't grow anything without the right dirt. And so this isn't about cleaning our lives up. This is about allowing God to use our mess to turn into mud so that we can bear fruit. Speaking of mud, I've got to be very careful with my word choices here tonight. I had the unfortunate, that's not a good start. I had the unfortunate life lesson of having my 3 boys for 3 days solo with my wife away. And before I get judged, I'm not confessing that it was a good time, nor am I saying it was a bad time. I'm just here saying it was messy. And I'm also saying that I have no idea why I'm telling you this, but maybe it's a cry out for help. Kirsty, I need you to come home, please. But the boys showed me something where I had them. It was a fun time. And I had the boys solo. Kirsty was away at my sister's hands. And if you know anything about kids, and especially my boys, they like to create a lot of mess. It's just mess, and I can't keep up, and I'm chasing them, and I'm doing all these things, and it's just constant. And you kind of realize the importance of having your wife around. Love you again if you're watching. Oh, thank you. But there was this one, I think it was like Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning. I was literally just finished cleaning the house, and I was folding up one of the kids' clothes, getting them ready for the weekend. And I'm in the bedroom, and I just, like the front bedroom, and I smell this awful smell. Like, it was horrendous. I was like, what is that smell? Like, it stunk. And I was like, I got to investigate because the house smells very bad. And so I put down, the clothes I was folding, and I came to the hallway, and right down the edge of the hallway, like right down the bottom, there's my youngest son, Rocky. Now, just keep in mind, he's not even 2 yet. He's standing at the end of the hallway, completely butt naked, no pants, no nappy, just standing there like this. And I said, "Rocky, where are your pants?" And he looks at me, doesn't say a word, and just bolts. I said, okay. So I go up the hallway. The smell's getting worse. And I look in the kitchen, and there was this brown substance on the cupboards, on the floor. It was everywhere. And I look up at the sky. I'm not even making this up. If my neighbor looks through the window, he'd be like, this guy's crazy. I looked at the sky and I said, God, I pray to God, I pray that's mud. I pray that the kids have brought mud through the doors and there's dirt in the house, and that's totally okay if it is because I can fix it. But I'm telling you now, my spider senses were tingling, and that was definitely, I don't think that was mud. And Rocky's gone. He's like fled the whole crime scene. And you know, Rocky's been doing this lately. Like he literally has been pooing in the bath. Like he's just at that age. But I see my other two boys in the lounge, and I was like, Dallas, like, what are you watching him? Like, weren't you parenting your brother? Like, what happened? And I said, Dallas, do you know what's happened? And I'm like, in my head, I know what's happened, but I'm like in denial about it. I'm like, they're going to tell me it's not what I think it is. And I'm like, Dallas, do you know what happened? And he just shrugs his shoulders. Dallas he's the oldest, so he's smart. He's like, I ain't getting involved. I ain't snitching. So he's just like, but Blaze, and fun fact about Blaze, his middle name is Truth. And so I said to Blaze, Blaze, what happened? And he goes, Rocky did a poo. And I was like, you didn't think to tell me? And he goes, nah, Rocky did a poo. And I said, all right, I've got to go find him. So I go find Rocky. He's in his room, and surprisingly, he was clean. It was just the house that was destroyed. I look at him, I said, Rocky, what happened, buddy? And he just goes, poo. I said, okay, thanks for admitting it. I said, let's go clean it up. So I tried to make a lesson out of it. He didn't seem to care. I got the spray and wipe, and we're spraying it, and I'm gagging. I'm like, and what I'd figured out is he'd just somehow maybe because I didn't change his nappy for 2 days, we'll cut that out of the tape. But he just decided to smear it everywhere, and the house was messy, and it was awesome. And I will say again, Kirsten, babe, if you're watching, please, I'm so sorry, and I need you home real quick. I don't want to sound like a drama queen, but I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm lucky to be here tonight because the last 3 days have taught me a lot of things, and that is kids are very, very, very messy, destructive, crazy humans. And so I'm looking about this, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm keeping on top of the house, and God does this funny thing. I'm spraying and wiping and cleaning up the mess. And I just hear God's voice just tell me in the kitchen as I'm spraying and wiping. He's like, that's how I see humanity. That's actually funny now I said that out loud. Just smearing our poo everywhere. It's crazy. But he's like, that's how I see humanity. It's just like a bunch of kids on earth trying to figure it out, creating mess, getting in sin, destroying places and running away when they get caught and all this crazy stuff. And we're in the middle of a series, right? We're in the middle of talking about putting our lives first, putting everything we got first before God. In the last couple of weeks, if you haven't seen them, go back and watch the other 3. But I've talked about everything from, forgiving people and the fruit of that will show. I've talked about, loving people and the fruit of that will show. And I've talked about, being generous to the church, being generous, not just occasionally, but all the time, just to see what God can do, and the fruit will show from that. And we've talked about forgiveness, just, all these things we've talked about. And God just kind of reminded me that although we've been called to bear fruit, and although we've been called to do good, and although we've been called to be part of growing, that you actually can't grow without mud. You can't grow without kind of the mess. And I realize this because it's like God will just leave us in a state that he just wants to remind us that none of us ever made it. We never accomplished this. And And one day our fruit might open opportunities that will change our lives, and I can't stand there and say, look what I've done. Because I'm reminded of my mess. I'm reminded of the mud. And I'll never, ever go, wow, I'm blessed, and look at the money I've made, because look what I've done. I'll have to be reminded it's only His good and wonderful grace that got me here. And so I have to constantly be reminded that when God's grace encounters my mess, it makes the mud fertile. And He begins to grow within me. Not by works, not because I'm trying harder, not because I gave more, not because I pretended to love more, not because I forgave more, but because He naturally starts to grow through my mess, that I learn to be more patient and I learn to be more kind, and I understand it now because I get it. I'm being in the mud. We're in the mud. I get what it feels to be broken and messed and filled with mistakes and hurt. I get it. But I want to remind myself tonight, and maybe whoever's listening online or if you're in the room, when Jesus and His grace really does meet your mess, it begins to turn your mud into a tree, and the tree into fruit. And people will see that you're more blessed, and people will see that you're more kind, and people will see that you're becoming more loving, and they will see the fruits of who you're becoming. But you will know that you came from the mud. You will know you were caught in the act of whatever sin it was, and you fell at the feet of Jesus, and everyone wanted to punish you, and He said, well, I don't. I love you. And so I know that fruit is an exciting thing to talk about. It's like we're going to change the world, and we're going to be kinder and sweeter and more forgiving and loving and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is, none of us deserve it. None of us deserve to be blessed. None of us deserve to have it all together. None of us deserve that job opportunity. None of us deserve it, because when you humble yourself and say, I came from the mud, then you start to realize what you're standing on, and that's God's grace. And here's what I'm learning. Humanity is the dirt. God's grace is the water. Come on, someone pick up what I'm saying tonight. Humanity is the dirt. You and I are the dirt. And God's grace is the water. Which means my faithfulness. Come on, someone that's been watching the last 3 parts. It means my faithfulness is the seed. Not my works, not my perfection, not how awesome I am, but my faithfulness to put Him first is the seed. God, I'm going to put You first, even though I don't want to forgive someone. So I know I'm from the mud, and I know that You didn't condemn me, so I no longer condemn them. Boom, there's fruit. All of a sudden, holy dolly, there goes. There's got fruit in his life. But we know in Ephesians, I can't boast about it. It's not me. Okay, I'm gonna give. I'm gonna be generous to the church. And I'm gonna be generous to my neighbor. And all of a sudden we're blessed, because that's how the fruit starts to show fruit. And all of a sudden I can't claim it. It's not mine, because I came from the mud. And all of a sudden it's like, well, God's asked us to love, and then people go, well, I know people from Hard House, they're really loving. I don't know how they get it. They're really loving. They lay down your life for your neighbor. Like they're really good down there. How did you do it? And you say, well, man, I came from the mud. I came from nothing, and something happened that when my mess collided with His grace, that my mess became mud, and the fruit started to spill out of my life. Because humanity is the dirt, God's grace is the water, and my seed of faithfulness is where I'm planting it. And so why you and I grow is because we're not awesome. We just have an awesome God. So none of us can boast. And I felt this when I was writing this down. I felt this spill out of my heart. Everything I am, and I want to believe this. I want to just connect with you for a second. Everything I am is because of him. Everything I'll ever get in my life is because of him. Everything that grows in my life is because of him. My life is because of him. My blessings are because of him. My opportunities are because of him. My family are because of him. My fruit is going to be because of him. Everything I am is because of him. Because when I remind myself that I was from the mud, he reminds me that everything is because of him. I'm nothing without him. And I don't know about you, church, but I don't want to pretend that I am. I'm nothing without him. He saved us. We don't change because we're good. We change because he's good. And humanity is messy. You don't have to be around longer than 5 minutes to know that. And sometimes you're thinking, why is the preacher talking about fruit and changing our lives and all this sort of stuff, and I'm just stuck here in the mud? Let me tell you something. When God's grace collides with your mud, it becomes fertile, and you become unbelievably faithful in the seeds you plant in the places you want God to grow them. And here's my number one point tonight, and this is out of love. This is out of love for online. This is out of love for myself. This is out of love for this room. This is out of love. I just want to ask this question, my number one point. Maybe we struggle with giving all to him because we haven't accepted all of him. Because I've had people talk to me about what I've been preaching the last 3 weeks, and they say, I'm struggling with this. And I've sat with them and I've held their hand and we've talked about it. And it's a tough situation. We want to talk about all the fun stuff, but here's the reality of it. God hasn't called us to give us parts of us, and he gives us parts of him. I think we struggle with it because if we haven't, we can't give him all of us if we haven't accepted all of him. And so there's this weird manufactured / growth conflict between I'm manufacturing my religion so people think I'm awesome and I'm going to heaven, and I'm generally trying to grow as a person. I'm generally trying to become a better husband, not just be seen as a better husband. I'm generally trying to be a better person, not just be seen as a better person. I'm generally trying to be more generous, not just be seen as someone that's generous. And we have this tuggle because we're not always going to give all of us to him, but all of a sudden we won't accept all of him for us. You know how I know this is because when you accept all of him, you start to realize that he can have all of you. And I think that's why he said to the lady caught in adultery, he said, hey, I don't condemn you, but please get up, walk away from this. You got places to be, you got places to go. My grace is sufficient, and I love you, but don't live in the unkindness. Don't live in the unforgiveness. Don't live in the place of hatred. Don't live in the place of stinginess. Don't live in the place of not knowing your self-worth. Start to walk away from that sin and start to inherit fruit in your life and start to grow. That God will do something through you and within you, not because you're awesome, but because in the mud, his grace collided with your mess, and that's how this whole thing works. And so maybe we struggle with giving our all because we haven't accepted it all. And I want to ask this question to everyone in the church tonight and everyone online. Do you know, look at me, do you know that God forgave you? Do you know that he forgave you for everything you did? Do you know he forgave you? Like, try to take off the cliche I'm preaching to right now. Do you know he forgave you? Like, he forgave you. He forgave you. Not some of you. Not the parts that we get to see on Sunday. Not the nice, fluffed up version of religion. But he forgave the dark, deep secrets in your life. Do you know that God forgave you? And when you know that God forgave you, all of a sudden, this isn't a struggle about if he can have my all. I start to say, I don't even have anything to give me because he is my all. And that's who I am. And I can't change the fact that everything I am is because of him. You only struggle with what I'm preaching. And you only struggle with what I've been preaching. Not to try harder to give more to him, You will only struggle because you haven't accepted all of him. And once you accept all of him, once you realize he did pay the price for that addiction, he did pay the price for that affair, he did pay the price for that drug, those drugs you're taking, he did pay the price for all the nasty things that happen. When you start to realize he paid the price, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I'm from the mud, but then the mud's fertile, and I know that God's going to grow a beautiful tree out of this mud, and that tree's going to start to have fruit, and all of a sudden there might be people applauding and people saying, man, look at the fruit in his life, look at the fruit in their lives, and you will respond with, I cannot boast because it was a gift from God, and I can't even make this up, I can't even produce this, I can't even manufacture this. It grew from within me because I gave my life and everything I had to him, because all I am is him, and everything I ever will be is because of him. And so I'm terrified now of being manufactured. I just want to step into growing. Pastor, teach me more, tell me more, challenge me more, because we don't want to be manufactured into good people. We want to be bad people that realize God's grace saved us in the badness and then grew our lives to reach those far from him. As the band comes. Do you know God forgave it all? Like we might have a list, or like God might have. Now I know that I'm not just preaching to myself, but even I know that sometimes I have this list of like, maybe God forgave the white lie, and maybe he's forgiven, the thing I did when I was 21, and there's all these things, and then I get to a point where I'm like, the things I'm doing now, or the things I've been through, or the things that have happened to me, maybe he draws the line there, and all of a sudden if I draw the line there, then I start to draw the line of what I give him and how much I trust him, and we start to draw lines. And then so we manufacture our stance. I'm at church right now and it's manufactured. Instead of being at the feet of Jesus going, God, I'm so thankful that you did this for me, that you took me out of the mud, that you met me right where I was at in my mess. And so, don't live in manufactured Jesus or manufactured gospel. Start to realize that he'll meet you in your mess. And when he meets you in your mess, your life will become fertile, which then produces fruit. You can't manufacture the blessing. You can't manufacture the kindness. You can't manufacture anything. You have to grow. That if humanity is the dirt and God's grace is the water, then my faithfulness is the seed. That he'll take my mess and my mud and he'll turn it into something amazing, and I'll never be able to boast about it. And this is the confidence I have before I go, is that I know my life's going to become something. And I know my family's life is going to be something. And you know what? A little secret between you and me, I know this church is going to become something. And I'll tell you why I'm so guaranteed on it. I'll bet on this. I'll go to the bank on this, that our church is going to have fruit. And that the people's lives in this church are going to have fruit. And my life's going to have fruit. You know why I'm going to bank money on this? And you know why I'll bet on it? No betting in the house of the Lord. But you know why I'll bet on this? Because I no longer think I'm doing it. And I no longer think it's me. And I no longer think it's happening our way. I start to go, God, you do what you got to do. And I'm going to follow you. And I'm going to be faithful in everything I've got and everything I am. I'm going to be kind to the people that aren't kind to me. I'm going to be loving to the people that hate me. I'm going to sow and be generous to places where I feel like I can't be generous. I'm going to put you first. And I guarantee there's going to be fruit in my life. It's in his word. It's guaranteed. We're going places, not because we're awesome and we manufactured it, but because we believed in our hearts that he saved us in the mud. I'm a product of mud, and I'll be the first one to say it. As your pastor, I'm a product of mud. So any fruit you see is just from the goodness and the gloriousness of our God. Stand with me tonight.